that was a really good Commander night. Great games, great people, great food.
Yeah, it was nice. I had to be home, though. I'm kind of tired.
Here, let me take your coat. I'll put it on the yawns crossing.
Oh, thanks, James. Did you want a cup of tea?
Sure, that'd be great.
Oh, I've left my decks in the car. Would you mind getting them while I boil the kettle?
Oh, you'd lose your head if it wasn't screwed on properly.
Oh, ha ha.
All right, I'm going. Hey, Walt, there's a green glow coming from the door.
What the?
Walt and James, it is time to get commanded.
No, not now. We haven't prepared anything.
You have been tasked with the construction of a new commander deck.
Hang on, no. I need to check what decks I already have and what strategy is missing. I don't want to double up.
Walt, it's okay.
The deck's theme is Aristocrats.
See, I already have that strategy.
And so do I, but we just released our deck building template episodes. We got this easy.
I don't think that green glow is going away until this deck is built, James.
Then we'll build it. Together.
Is that the theme song?
I think so. Looks like it really is. Time to get commanded.
That's my line.
Oh man, that was weird. We were in the theme song.
Something's broken.
That was weird.
This is not right. I mean, welcome to the Get Commanded podcast by the Queensborough Commander community. It's the GCP by the GCC, helping you to have better games of Commander. I'm your host, Walt.
And hello, Commander players. I'm your other host, James, and just been beamed into this episode.
Yeah, normally we'd have an incoming transmission right about now, but we've already received our transmission from the deep depths of the galaxy from the Space Commanders. It's already time to get commanded.
This episode's all over the place.
I don't even know how I feel or what to do.
What a weird episode.
Look, we have to build a deck. I reckon, by the way, the Space Commanders heard that Arlo asked us about an Aristocrats deck for the Q&A, forever ago now, and I reckon they knew that he didn't get his answer, and I reckon they have,
Or, hear me out.
Okay.
Arlo is one of the Space Commanders.
Oh my god. Arlo, we need confirmation that you are not from outer space. Any confirmation will do, we require it. Or I don't know what we'll do.
Oh my lord, I'm scared now. Arlo, for those that don't know Arlo is one of our friends and players in the community in the local game stores we play in, so...
He's lovely. I'm sorry I've called him out as an alien. I didn't mean to.
But look, alright, we have our transmission. We have to build a Aristocrats deck.
An Aristocrats deck. I have one of these. I actually built one only a few months ago. I've talked about it a few times, but my Queen Marchesa deck. So
yeah. I
reckon I'll kind of use that as a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an Aristocrats deck that you can kind of draw on? Or?
Look, I say that I do, but there's not a lot of Aristocrats effects in it. Okay. But I use the Aristocrats play patterns of sacrificing creatures over and over again, on looping different things for value. And
Gotcha.
My deck is what I call I'd call it a sub-theme.
Okay.
It's my Firelaf deck, because I have a ton of plants.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see what you mean. There's a lot of fling.
Goblin Bombardment is the semi-Aristocrats effect in there, right?
No, that makes sense. So I guess we should probably sort of give an idea of what Aristocrats is as a deck.
Important to break that down when we're building that type.
When we're building one.
Yeah.
Aristocrats kind of draw their name from a type, the theme is named after a particular type of card, which is colloquially called an aristocrat.
Yeah.
So basically the way that an aristocrat's deck wins is typically by sacrificing your own creatures and gaining incremental value when you do so. Typically, you're, quote, draining your opponents. So this is any effect where it causes your opponents to lose life, especially when you then gain the life that was lost. So
envisage vampire sucking blood from you kind of effect.
Which is typically, a lot of these cards are vampires, right? That's a thing that happens for sure. So examples of the actual effect, what you would call an aristocrat effect, Blood Artist is
that's probably the OG
quintessential one. It's a 1 and a black for a 0/1 creature that says whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, target opponent loses a life and you gain a life.
Yeah. But there's a bunch of repeats of this effect in Magic.
Stacks. Heaps of them.
So, like, Bastion of Remembrance is a new one that's an enchantment.
Yeah, so that ETBs and makes a human, which
you can use to sack, yeah.
We'll go into why that's so good. But this one actually reads something slightly different, which says whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. And that says each opponent as well. So we can basically, these are the two categories of Aristocrat. We can kind of break them down into these two categories. Yep. So in one camp, we have the effects that will drain a singular opponent. So that they will say, when another creature dies, target opponent loses a life and you gain a life. So Blood Artist is one. Falconwrath Noble is another one. These are doing only 1 damage per creature dying, effectively, to each player that you're draining. But they typically see every single creature that dies on the whole board. So if you board wipe, and a Blood Artist is on the field, on my side of the field, Blood Artist will see, my 5 creatures and James's 8 creatures and player 3's 9 creatures and player 4's 10 creatures. It's a lot of life.
And if you've never played against an Aristocrat strategy, there comes a point in a game when you're up against an Aristocrats player. You're like, I need to board wipe. Their board is out of control. But if I do, I'm going to be drained for like 20 life here.
Yeah.
It's really sketchy. So like you then need to think about like targeted removal first and then board wipe.
Yeah.
It's one of these deck strategies that forces you to play against it in a really, I call it a frustrating way, because like you can't just do the simple, I'm going to solve everything and just blow everything up.
No, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, 100%. But there are other effects that are Aristocrats, like we mentioned before about Bastion of Remembrance, that drain everyone. So Bastion of Remembrance is a good example of this.
Yes.
There's also Zulaport Cutthroat, which is a creature that does it. Yep. Another one in Orzhov colors. All of the cards we've mentioned so far are black, but this one is actually white and black.
Yes.
Which is Cruel Celebrant.
Yep, same thing. So these ones will drain each of your opponents for 1. So it's effectively like draining for 3, but they only trigger when your creatures die. So it's kind of the trade-off you get.
Yeah.
And look, typically we want to be playing both in an Aristocrats deck. Both are really, really strong.
It's our strat. It's like, it's what we want to be doing.
It's the thing. So one thing that I think is immediately going to come to mind here is like, what is the difference between this sort of way of building a deck and what we might sort of colloquially call a reanimator deck?
Oh, yeah,
a deck that's sort of like bringing things back from the graveyard. And look, there's a lot of overlap, I think, between these two types of decks.
A lot of them end up running sub-themes of each other. Like, you can have an Aristocrats deck with a Reanimator sub-theme, and then a Reanimator deck with a small Aristocrats sub-theme.
Yeah, and I've totally built both of these before. So, like, an example of an Aristocrat, like an explicitly Aristocrat-style commander, at least, Teysa Karlov is probably the quintessential one. So the main thing that Teysa does, I think it gives token creatures vigilance and lifelink, which is cool, but the main thing that it says is if a creature dying would cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger.
That isn't a mana ability. Important.
That isn't a mana ability. Yep. It triggers twice instead. So this is effectively with those specifically Aristocrats cards like Blood Artist, like Bastion of Remembrance. This says when a creature dies, it does that twice instead.
Yeah, there's also that really cool new Orzhov commander. It's a legendary creature, but it's like uncommon, and you play it in your Marchesa deck. I can't remember it's a very weird name.
Elas Ilkor,
That's
I think
the one.
It's called. Yeah.
That's actually really cool because it has 2 different ways of the Aristocrats effect.
Yeah.
It has whenever a creature dies on your board, each opponent loses a life.
Yes.
But then when a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life.
Yeah, this is kind of a weird one where it's not doing the typical drain you, I gain life in the one sort of line of text. Like, it's 2 separate things. But you do get this weird thing of like, you get the life draining, but also, creatures entering the battlefield gaining you life stacks up a lot over the course of a game. That's definitely Aristocrats for sure as well. The other one I'd throw in here is like someone like Yawgmoth, the mono black Yawgmoth. I mean, this card's a house in so many strategies.
Free sacrifice outlet on him.
That draws cards. It's crazy. It's
wild.
Absolutely crazy how strong that card is. But I think that the probably the strongest way to build Yawgmoth as your commander would be to do Aristocrats, to have lots of creatures that you're sacrificing and to get that incremental value by sacrificing them.
Yeah, but to highlight the opposite end, the Reanimator style, just quickly, a couple of commanders that do this really, really well is Merrin of Clan Maltoth.
Yep, that's like the quintessential reanimator commander, right?
Yep. Golgari, I got big creatures in bin, I sacrifice them, but look, they come back on end step and do their thing again.
Yep, it's a great commander.
Marchesta the Black Rose is a fantastic one.
Yeah, this is the Grixis one. Yeah, so creatures with +1 counters on it when they die, you get them back in the end step. Really, really strong, for sure. Sephirus of the Hidden Ways I would throw in here. This is the Forgotten Realms commander.
The dungeon diving one?
Yeah, the precon. So this one's Esper, so black, white, and blue. And this one ventures into the dungeon when a creature is... Oh, it's so weird. When a creature card is put into your graveyard from anywhere during your turn...
milled or dies.
Oh, no. Yeah, but only once a turn. So it can trigger other people's turns, but only once. Anyway, it's weird. But look, it's definitely going to work if you want to be sacrificing creatures a lot because you're going to get them back.
Yeah.
Reanimating them. It's a reanimator deck for sure.
And then there's like Carador as well. There is a ton of... There's heaps. But these commanders are like... You can kind of build... strategies with them similarly. Again, you can have these sub-themes, bit of a blurry line.
They're sort of like a spectrum, I think, where there's like pure Reanimator on one end and pure Aristocrats on the other, but most decks are going to sit somewhere in between on that line.
Yeah, like my Scarab God deck has no Aristocrat sub-theme. It's just a Reanimator
deck. Totally.
100%.
Yeah.
And I just kind of want to point out before we kind of dive into the nuts and bolts of what we're going to do with an Aristocrats deck and the numbers and actually start building is Aristocrats... Like we talked about it before, think vampire draining the life out of you. I actually just want to take a second to appreciate that the fact that this deck archetype has got the name Aristocrats, because an aristocrat is someone from high society that really doesn't care about... look, I'm happy to get political on this podcast. Let's do this. But sacrificing things aren't a detriment to them. Using people for their own benefit is beneficial for them. Yeah. So I don't care if a 1/1 dies, I get this.
Yeah, and I think that's basically, funnily enough, I think that's kind of the thesis statement. I'm going to go a bit academic here, but that's kind of the thesis statement of an Aristocrats deck is, I don't care if my things die. It's not a setback for me. So I can make bad cards good, and I can make good cards great if I choose the right ones.
Yes, and if you play them in the right order as well. I think I've borrowed your Marchesa deck, and when I played it, I did feel very almost I hold dominion over my deck. I'm like, I'm commanding these people. Like, these poor soldiers don't want to be sacrificed for my benefit, but I will throw them off the cliff to make myself gain life.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
There is something to be said for the fact that I think it's one of the best things about Magic. Playing particular ways makes you feel a particular way.
Yeah.
Like, the game mechanics have vibes to them.
I totally agree. Like, for example, when you play like a go wide strategy and you're finally at the point where you turn everything sideways and swing for lethal, the action of like putting your forearms on your playmat and swinging everything is like a very raw kind of like
the wilds rising up. Yeah, totally.
I love it. And like the control, like I love playing counter spells. So when I play counter magic, I sit there with like my fingers pressed on either side of my chin.
Feels intellectual.
Yeah, I feel I'm better than you and I know it.
I've got knowledge that you don't know anything about it.
You haven't gone to school, have you? All right,
back on Aristocrats. We know what they are. Let's start building a deck before they kill us.
There's that green glow is getting
strong. Brighter. We got to get out of here. We got to build the deck. So I think the first question we should ask is how many actual Aristocrats should be in the deck? How many of those effects?
This is an Aristocrats deck, so we run all of them, everyone we can, right?
James, you silly goose. You do not. Look, the thing about an Aristocrats deck is that, funnily enough, these cards, they're going to be probably our way of winning. Like we talked about win cons before when we did our deck building template. They're also enhancers. They make our creatures dying better. But on an empty board, a Blood Artist doesn't really do anything until something else is introduced to the mix.
Look, I set you up to give that advice, but I don't believe this at all. I completely agree with what you're saying. On an empty board, an Aristocrat is just usually a 2/3 flyer with Death Touch or something like that.
It's not doing much to the board.
It does nothing. And also, Blood Artist can do something if your opponent's creatures dies, but they're probably not playing Aristocrats, so they're going to keep their creatures. So, they really do absolutely nothing. And when we spoke about our enhancers, when we were talking about deck building in our template, we said that the easy thing to kind of define an enhancer is that they have an incredibly high ceiling, but a very low floor.
Yes, totally. And I think Aristocrats fit this bill for this deck.
Yeah.
Like the actual Aristocrat cards. So like, yeah, Blood Artist, yes. On that amazing gunked up board that's just been board wiped, yeah, that's like 40 life you're draining from your opponents. You're gaining 40, but on an empty board where nothing is happening, it's a 0-1 with no other abilities.
That's actually Blood Artist, yeah. The art is cool. I like the art of Blood Artist.
It's cool art. You're contributing to the artistic presentation of the game.
Get a playmat with the Aristocrat. If you really just want to play all these cards for the art, get yourself a playmat with Blood Artist on it, and then you'll feel like you've got an Aristocrat there all the time.
It's true. So look, I think probably in terms of numbers, I reckon we're sort of looking at the similar numbers to when we looked at win cons and enhancers for our deck building template. So probably around like the 5 to 8 number, I want to say. I think minimum 5, but I wouldn't go higher than 8, definitely.
It's interesting because we're considering these both a win con and an enhancer.
Yes.
So we can take our number for win cons of 5 and add our win cons or add our enhancer number of like 1 to 5.
Yeah.
And go, okay, 5 to 8.
Yeah.
Let's call it 5 to 8.
Exactly. There will be other win cons and enhancers in our deck though, which I think is why we didn't go say like right off the bat 10. Yeah. Because there's going to be other stuff we're going to want to include, which we'll go into later. But so if we're not playing that many of these actual Aristocrats, then what should the rest of our deck be? I think it has to be, a good chunk of it should be creatures that make more creatures, especially token creatures.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing. We have a very limited number of cards in Commander. 100 cards is not a lot when you think 35 to 40 of them will be lands or something like that. Like, so you can't just have a creature in your deck that does nothing. I love is it Undying, where when they die, they create a creature? Or not Undying.
No, Afterlife.
Afterlife, that's the one. So when they die, they make like a spirit, which is giving you 2 creatures for 1 card.
Yeah.
So when we talked about, like, I think it was in our phrasing episode where we were talking about like going 1 for 2 or 2 for 1.
Yes.
These cards that, poop out other cards in an Aristocrat strategy are a 1 for X. Like, you're using 1 card but getting however many resources.
Totally. I think especially in decks like Taser, where you're getting that dies trigger twice. Afterlife specifically is going to be great. But just to throw a couple of other cards out there that are going to be creatures especially that make more creatures are going to be extra good because, like we said, we're somewhere on that Reanimator spectrum as well. So if it's a creature card that's making more tokens, we can get that creature back and get the tokens back as well. So as an example, Weaponcraft Enthusiast. This I think is also a 0-1, funnily enough, but it has Fabricate 2. Very weird mechanic. It's a 3 mana creature. Either when it enters the battlefield, you can put 2+1 counters on it, or you can make 2 servos. So these are 1/1 artifact creatures.
Yeah.
So that we're never going to put counters on it. Spoiler.
We want those 1/1s, baby.
We want those 1/1s. So when it enters the battlefield, it's a 3 mana creature that makes 2 more creatures. That's 3 creatures for 3 mana. That's going to be 3 Blood Artist triggers right on the board, right away.
That's so cool. Another creature that makes a lot of creatures over and over again is Ghoul-Caller Gisser.
Oh, this card's so good.
So cool.
So strong.
It is also a legendary creature.
Could be your commander.
You could run this as your commander if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But you pay a black and tap it and sacrifice a creature.
Yeah.
And then you create X 2/2 zombies where X is the sacrificed creature's power, or is it toughness?
No, power. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. And this is a repeatable effect.
You can do this every turn.
And also, you're sacrificing a creature to do this. You're triggering all of those Aristocrats effects.
Yeah, and this is the kind of thing that you'll get into with Aristocrats, is the wheels keep on turning, and that's kind of how you want to do it. In a similar vein, Abhorrent Overlord. This is a 7 mana creature. I think it's a 5/5 with flying.
So this is a big splash. This is going to sit right at the top of your mana curve if you try to choose this one.
Yes, definitely. Sure. When it enters the battlefield, you make a number of 1/1 black harpies with flying equal to your devotion to black. So this is the number of black mana pips in the permanents on your battlefield. So that's going to be amazing. It's going to make a lot of tokens right away. And also, in your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. So
it's a sack outlet as well.
Typically that would be a downside, right? We don't really want to sacrifice our creatures, but in an Aristocrats deck, we're happy to sack a creature. It might be one we can then reanimate and get back.
It's so cool. I think, like, Yeah, there's so many more creatures that, make other creatures, but I want to give a big shout out to like enchantments that do the same effect.
Sure.
So for example, I got two.
Yeah.
They're both zombie examples because
That's your way of doing it.
I love zombies, and my Scarab God deck is one of my favorites. But two examples that make creatures all the time: Dreadhorde Invasion.
Yeah.
2 mana enchantment that in your upkeep you lose a life and amass.
Yeah,
which is where you create a 0/0 zombie army and put a counter on it. But if you have a zombie army, you put another counter on that zombie army.
The sort of trick here is that you actually don't want to keep the zombie army. If it's dying every single turn when you get to your sort of main phase and stuff, or you use it as a blocker, then when it comes back to your upkeep, you're just making a creature every upkeep for 2 mana. It's great.
And it's great. Like, okay, that downside of losing a life is pretty horrible, but you're an Aristocrats. You're going to drain everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Another one that I really liked is, I cannot remember it. I really hope you remember the name of it. It is 2 black and black, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you make X zombies, where X is the number, or you make X zombies where X is half the number of zombies you control, or one addition to that.
I actually don't know the name of that card, but
it's incredible.
That's really going to add up, especially in a zombie tribal deck. Like, over the course of a game, that's going to be a crazy amount of value.
Yeah, so if you run Ghoul-Caller Gista as your commander, that is an incredible inclusion in an Aristocrat strategy.
Totally. I think the other thing we're going to be wanting to throw a lot of in our deck, not so much as the cards we were just talking about that make more creatures. In terms of those ones, I reckon we want like 15. Yeah. I would sort of go a bit lower on these, more like 8 to 10 of this next category. Creatures that want to die, like want to be sacrificed. Immediately one that comes to mind, Serrated Scorpion.
I play this in my Pauper list.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's a house. It's a 1 mana 1/2. Shout out cards printed in the last 3 years that do this. 1 mana 1/2 for no reason. When it dies, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life.
Is it really each?
It is.
Because I only play this in Pauper, so that's a 1-on-1 format.
I've played it in my Arami deck and it's nuts.
Oh, because you make 3
copies.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's a reanimated deck, not so much an Aristocrats one. But yeah, the amount of life this will do really adds up. And it's a 1 mana creature.
Yeah. And what's really cool about the creatures that want to die, they generally have like... Some creatures have both effect of like they do something when they come in and they do something when they die.
Sure.
So when we do have that sub-theme of reanimation, or we just generate value by giving things persist or undying.
Yeah.
Like cards like Solemn Simulacrum.
Yeah. Sad robot. Yeah.
So sad. Are great in this kind of strategy.
Yeah, because it's got an enter the battlefield trigger.
Yep.
Gets you a basic from your library, puts it on the battlefield.
And when we sacrifice it, we not only drain everybody, but we draw a card as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one to get loops going of, for sure.
You know, one of my favorite ways to use this is sacrificing it to a card called Viscera Seer. You sacrifice the creature, the trigger to draw goes on the stack, you draw a card, and then you scry one. So you get like amazing card advantage just by doing one free action.
No, that's really good. A card I rate super highly in my Aristocrats deck is Cavalier of Night. This one, again, similar to what you just said about Solemn, fits in both of those camps of enter the battlefield and dies triggers. The enter the battlefield trigger, I believe, is you can sacrifice a creature to destroy a creature.
Almost like an exploit when it...
Basically that kind of mechanic. But when it dies, you can return a creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Whoa!
Yeah, so like you can get a lot of value. You could return your Serrated Scorpion and, do it all again.
But you could get, like, for example, if, all of our Aristocrats pieces...
Yeah, most of them are less than 3.
Blood Artist, Cruel Celebrant.
Yeah.
If this dies...
Falconwrath Noble, yeah. Not Falconwrath Noble. Zulaport Cutthroat, you could get back. Yeah.
The other vampire one.
Cruel Celebrant.
Cruel Celebrant. No, the other one. Or is that 3 and a black?
I think Falconwrath Noble is 4.
No, I'm thinking there's another one. I remember the art. It's like he's like coming at the
Vindictive Vampire?
Vindictive Vampire.
That one's also 4, I think.
Damn, so close. But a couple of them.
A lot of them, yeah.
And again, it fits in the strategy, so it gets back your key pieces. This is just... it's the sauce. It's so good.
It's the gravy.
The gravy. Hashtag callback.
That's the last episode. Well, that's a good start for sure. Like, we know sort of where we're coming from. We know what the deck is all about. Do we want to have a little thrifty interlude?
Ooh, I feel like when we do thrifty interludes in the future, I'm going to buy like a little set of chimes for the desk where I can just...
Oh my god. I know you said chimes, but I immediately thought of Grease. And you know how, like, the announcement, she has the little, like, xylophone? She goes ding, 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 ding,
Either of those. All right. The next episode we record, you'll expect me to come with my little chimes.
It's your action, James. You gotta get that. You gotta bring it for us.
I'm gonna make a note of this in my phone while we do the Thrifty Interlude.
All right. Well, yes, it's time for the Thrifty Interlude. We'll feature a weird, zany, well, in this case, ad for a card, a cheap card. This one actually can go in our deck. And we will, of course, be back to talk about card draw, ramp, removal, all the other fun stuff we're going to put in our Aristocrats deck. But before that, do you want to introduce the card that we're talking about this week, James?
Yeah, again, every single time it almost fits with what we're talking about. It's almost like you planned this.
I couldn't possibly, James. We just received the transmission.
But this card fits almost perfectly into an Aristocrat strategy. The card for the Thrifty Interlude this episode is Doomed Artisan. For 2 and a white, you're going to get a creature, human artificer. Sculptures you control can't attack or block. Also reads, at the beginning of your end step, create a colorless sculpture artifact creature token with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of sculptures you control. It's a 1/1.
Do you ever feel like people are watching you and not in a good way? Do you also feel as though the things that you do are meaningless to you but significant to others? Most importantly, do you want to laugh at some dingus who sucks more than you? Introducing Greg the Useless Sculptor. He spends his entire life toiling away at his art and never, ever, under any circumstances, realizes that he's a genius who can create living statues. It's hilarious! Reap all of the benefit from someone else's life and contribute nothing at all yourself, like a real estate agent. Get budgeted! 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 Budgeted!
Oh my God. You know what I love? The pure irony of that last line?
What?
It's so self-aware that this guy's selling something in a very real estate agent kind of vibe and is selling this honestly incredible card.
It's great. It's really, really good.
But also in an Aristocrat strategy, kind of bonkers.
It makes a sculpture every end step. And I think that the reason it becomes busted in Aristocrats, it's already great making a body every end step.
That's great.
Oh, each of your end steps, sorry.
Well, we literally just spoke about how creatures that make multiple creatures, we want to run 15?
Yeah. So this can 100% be one of them. Because the other thing you can do, once you've got a few of the sculptures, you can sack Greg, the Useless Sculptor, and you keep the sculptures, and only Greg reads sculptures you control can't attack or block.
So all your tokens can swing now.
Yeah.
Oh, so in like a Taser deck, that's wild because they've got lifelink and stuff.
Oh yeah, they would have lifelink and vigilance in Taser.
That's insanity.
Yeah, really, really, like a lot better than it looks. So please do try it if you haven't already.
Wild.
Anyway, look, if you wanted to read more of these weird, zany ads and monologues and stuff, they're released regularly every Thursday on Discord. Our Discord is linked in the show notes. You can also see some of these on TikTok. I've made a couple of them into videos. I'll certainly make a few more. It's G_Commander Community. So chuck us a follow on there if you want to see them as they come out.
Yeah, and definitely the Discord is the place to connect with Walt and I.
Yes.
If you want to ask us questions for maybe an upcoming Q&A episode, who knows? But if you want to get in contact with us and talk about our decks or want to send us your decks for us to have a quick glance over, or if you just want to possibly maybe play a spell table game or two,
someday soon we might have the capability. Yeah, no, definitely engage with us. And we have a whole community of people we play with at our local store. A lot of them are in there. They're really, really fantastic people. A lot of them listen to this podcast. They're really, really great players and people. So even if me and James are not ourselves replying, which we will, by the way, we'll definitely will reply. There's plenty of people out there who have really interesting thoughts on Commander, and we love hearing from them. I'm sure you will as well.
Yeah, like Arlo, who requested this Aristocrats themed episode.
Yeah, which coincided so nicely with the green light appearing under the door.
Which we should probably get back to building.
We should get back to that,
right?
shouldn't we? Okay, like we've gone through the Aristocratsy bit of the Aristocrats deck. Let's talk about some of our essentials. We've outlined this in our deck building template before, but basically the real crucial stuff of card draw, ramp, and removal.
So these are things that we need in all decks.
Every Commander
deck,
yeah.
All Commander decks need to draw cards. Ramping is debatable in some ways.
As we've talked about
this. But if you accelerate the mana available that you have in your deck, you're going to be casting bigger mana cost spells at a sooner turn, which is important. And removal, I can guarantee you're playing against 3 other people. You're going to want to get rid of some of the stuff on their side of the board.
Absolutely.
So, all right, should we start at the top?
Yeah, card draw. Let's do it. We talked about before how we love different types of card draw. We sort of broke them into 3 categories. There's some stuff that kind of bridges the gap here, but they sort of work reasonably well. So the 3 categories we had was activated, passive, and burst. So burst card draw is going to be the kind of thing where it's a spell that or an effect that just draws you a certain number of cards as a one-off kind of thing. You can think of a card like Harmonize as a typical example. Of
Pull from tomorrow.
Pull from tomorrow. Just draw the cards now. That's what it does. Activated, we can think of as more something that requires some sort of input into it to draw the cards, but also is often repeatable. So like a card like Greater Good, which will be good in a lot of Aristocrats decks, by the way.
It does fit now. It says sacrifice a creature on it. So
Yeah. You basically draw 3 cards. Or you draw cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power, then discard 3 cards. So you're activating it by sacking that creature.
You're doing something.
You're doing something to get there.
Yeah,
exactly right.
And then you've got passive card draw, which is honestly one of my favorite types of card draw. It's card draw that just kind of, over time, will accumulate and get you cards, maybe 1 or 2 a turn, or like 1 a turn cycle.
Yeah.
Just over time. You don't really need to do much for this effect to happen.
No, it sort of just sits there and accrues value by drawing you cards over time.
Yeah. Now, one of the key things that we talked about in our deck building template saga of episodes was when we're looking at cards to go in our decks, we want the best way to pick one of these cards is if it synergizes with what our deck is trying to do.
Yeah, especially things that synergize with our commander are going to be really good. But also, in this case, we're building an Aristocrats deck, right? We care about creatures dying, and spoiler alert, there are a lot of great bits of card draw that care about creatures dying or sacrifice creatures. So we're just going to outline some of our favorites for this particular sort of strategy.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about passive, maybe as a good example of starting point, there are a bunch of creatures that just say on them, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. Some of them deal a damage to you, like Midnight Reaper. Grim Haruspex does not. It also has Morph randomly. Weird mechanic. Erebos Bleak-Hearted, similar kind of thing. Whenever this one actually will see tokens die and draw you cards, but you have to pay 2 life to do it, so it's a little bit of a cost, and a few of the card draw spells in black will do this. But yeah, all of these effects coupled with your Aristocrats are just going to let you cycle through your deck by sacking things. You're getting the incremental value. You're getting those dies triggers we talked about before. These are going to be really, really strong.
One of the key things that I'll give you a piece of advice on is note whether or not it says creature or non-token creature.
Yeah, because stuff that just says creature is going to be stronger. I do want to throw in the mix here. We've talked about this card a couple of times. We rate it super highly. Morbid Opportunist.
Oh, I think this is such a slept-on card. People should play this more often.
They should. It's still like $1. It's an uncommon card from Midnight Hunt. It's so good.
Budgeted.
Get budgeted. It reads, whenever 1 or more creatures die, draw a card. This triggers only once a turn.
Which you might go, ugh, that's terrible. It only happens once a turn. I may as well play Phyrexian Arena that I just lose a life and draw an extra card in my upkeep. No. Once a turn.
Yes.
Including your opponent's turns.
Yes. So if you have a free sacrifice outlet like your Greater Good that we talked about before, on someone else's turn, if you trigger this, you draw a card. Also, it doesn't say it has to be your creatures. So if someone else is just attacking, James is attacking Stella over here, and Stella blocks with a 1/1, and the 1/1 dies, I draw a card because a creature died during this turn.
And I can guarantee you that this card is not going to be a lightning rod for removal because, like I said before, people sleep on this card.
Yes.
It's not your typical Ristic study, which people are like, oh my god, this guy's going to draw so much cards.
I better deal with that right now. Yeah.
People are going to go, oh, what's that card do? Oh, once a turn? Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
And Walt, you'll just sit there quietly with your Morbid Opportunist going, oh, that died, I draw a card.
Yep.
And next turn, oh yeah, I'll draw another card.
Yes. The amount of cards this will draw over the course of the game will genuinely astound you. It's ridiculous. I think I've drawn in singular games I'll go out and say I reckon I've drawn upwards of 10 cards with just
Yeah.
Morbid Opportunist.
Wild.
It's crazy. It's so
Super
strong.
high proficient. I want to shout out one more.
Yeah.
It's a Planeswalker.
Yes.
Liliana Dreadhorde General.
Oh yeah, this card's
Super
great.
good.
This one is one that will see every creature die and draw you a card.
And it creates a token.
Yes.
It upticks to create a 2/2.
It does. It upticks to create a 2/2. So the passive on this Planeswalker, by the way, it's a 6-mana Liliana Planeswalker. Whenever a creature dies, draw a card. Passive. So you don't have to activate anything. Interestingly, this is not a May trigger. So you do have to be careful if your board is gunked up and you've got not many cards in your library. If they all die, you will have to draw all those cards.
Which, if you already have gone through half your library, drawing 50 cards is not going to be good.
No, it's not going to look good for you. Definitely
But
not.
again, that card fits in this card draw category. But as we talked about in our deck building episode, it also fits in the category of things that make bodies for us to sacrifice.
And we love these cards that sit in multiple categories. So yeah, good shout.
Yeah.
That card is fantastic. Those are some really good passive ones. What do you reckon for like activated? So the ones we have to feed something into to draw cards. What's some good examples for
All right,
this?
I'm going to name... I know we literally just released the popular cards versus boring cards episode.
Yes.
And I'm going to name a colorless card that sits in literally every single Aristocrats deck you will ever see.
Okay.
No matter what the color, because it's colorless.
Yeah.
It's an equipment. It's 1 equip cost.
Skull Clam.
There you go.
That card is so good. So this is a 1-mana equipment. You equip it to a creature for 1. So you've only paid 2 mana at this point.
Yep.
Equipped creature gets +1, -1. And when the equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards.
So the play pattern with this card is as it is an Aristocrats theme, most of these creatures that make bodies, these bodies are usually 1/1s.
Yes.
So they're usually not valuable to you in any other way. So they're just chumpy. You can chump with block them, all that kind
It's
of
the
stuff.
servo that we made before with our,
Exactly. All that kind of
Fabricate
stuff.
trigger,
Or the
yep.
spirit from the Afterlife trigger.
Yeah.
These are going to give you so many cards in your hand for just a couple of mana, because when you equip Skull Clamp to one of these 1/1s, it gets +1, -1. Now, in Magic, there's a rule that says, as a state-based action, if a creature has 0 toughness, it dies.
Goes to the graveyard.
It goes to the graveyard.
Which is going to trigger the Skull Clamp and draw you 2 cards.
So for 1 mana,
Yeah.
you draw 2 cards.
And the typical play pattern here is if you have an empty hand and you have your Skull Clamp and a few 1/1s, you just go pay 1, equip it to a 1/1, draw 2 cards. Didn't find what you were looking for? That's fine. Pay 1, put it on another 1/1, draw 2 more cards. Each of them are dying each time, but again, in our deck, we don't care about that. We want that to happen.
This is actually so frequently used in these strategies that people now use the phrase, "I'll clamp this creature."
Yeah, they do.
So it's now like a ubiquitous thing with these strategies.
It's so strong. I have heard calls to have Skull Clamp banned, and I honestly don't think they're unreasonable. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, yes, ban it right now, but I think it's a reasonable question to ask. It's that strong.
It's kind of wild.
Crazy good. If you have a copy, I think they're like $5-6, but if you can pick one up, it's really strong. In a similar vein, there's an enchantment in black, Vampiric Rites. It's a 1-mana enchantment. You can pay 1 and a black and sacrifice a creature. You gain a life and draw a card.
Okay. That's, repeatable. Super good.
Yep, and it's instant speed. You can do it at any time.
Yep.
Hold it up. Someone goes to remove something. You sack it in response, draw a card. I've done that a couple of times. Definitely, maybe more than a couple. It's really, really good. It's super highly rated.
Love that. I also I'm going to put these... We've talked about cards that kind of do card advantage, not quite card draw, but do it to a halfway house. So we'll consider these like 0.5 of a card draw slot.
So if we're aiming for that sort of 10 to 15 mark for our card draw, this, a couple of these half cards counts as 1. Yeah.
So 2 of the cards that immediately popped to my mind are Visceracy, which I mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah.
But also Woe Strider that you played literally the other week when we were playing against a couple of people in our local game store.
Yeah.
Incredible value. It's basically this. Both cards have the same effect where you sacrifice a creature for free, by the way.
Yep.
No mana intensive, and then you scry one.
Yes.
So not quite card draw, but card advantage.
Yep. Card selection.
Card selection.
Yep.
It's pretty decent. The best thing about Woe Strider, and I remember this specifically when I was playing with you, is because I removed it and forgot that Woe Strider has escape.
Yeah.
It comes back.
It comes back. So I think you pay 5. So you pay 3 black. You have to exile a few cards from your graveyard. I forget how many. It might be 3 or 2 or something like that. And just comes back to the battlefield again. Also, Woe Strider has another way that it sort of sits in this intersection in the deck that we really like. We talked about this before.
Oh yeah, it makes a goat.
It makes a goat. So like on an empty board, it's not just a creature that sacrifices stuff. It's a creature that sacrifices stuff with some fodder to throw under it. It's really, really good. Yeah, totally agree on that.
I also love the goat token. The
It's
specific goat token that's linked to Woe Strider from the Theros set.
It's the 0/1 goat.
It looks super cartoony, and
it does.
It's like a big old billy goat with like big horns.
Well, I think it's like the same vibe as the... Is Clackbridge Troll the same set? I think it is. Or is that Eldraine?
I think that might have been Eldraine, but they were printed very similar times.
It might be the same art even.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely another good one to go in the activated camp. I think if we're looking at burst card draw, there's a few of these that will be spells. There's one that's a creature that immediately comes to mind. Disciple of Bolas. This is a 4-mana creature that when it enters the battlefield, you can sacrifice another creature. If you do, you gain life and draw cards equal to its power.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So this is like definitely better in decks where you're going to be making a lot of big creatures. We talked before about
great with your sculptor, dude.
My great with your sculptures that you're making for sure. Definitely good in like a Gulkola Gisa kind of deck where you're probably going to want to make big creatures to sacrifice.
Or a Merrin deck with big power creatures.
My Merrin deck is sort of a power matters kind of thing. Yeah, no, it definitely draws you a good chunk of cards a good chunk of the time. Yeah, super highly rate it.
But there's a couple of other like spell slingery type ways to do this at instant speed. There's like Village Rites.
Yeah.
There's also Deadly Dispute. Both very similar effects. It's an instant spell. The Village Rites is 1 mana, and then Deadly Dispute is 1 and a black. And the Deadly Dispute creates a treasure, and you draw 2 cards. And Village Rites, you just draw 2 cards, but both sacrifice a creature on cast.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's a bit of extra card draw at instant speed.
For sure. The other one I would throw in that camp is Plumb the Forbidden. This one's kind of weird. It's from Strixhaven. It's 1 and a black for an instant. You draw a card and you lose a life. But as an additional cost to cast it, you can sacrifice any number of creatures. And for each creature you sacrifice, it's copied.
Whoa.
So, like, on the right board, it's like pay 1 and a black, sack 10 creatures, draw 10 cards, lose 10 life.
That's wild.
Yeah, and again, with Aristocrats, we're probably going to be gaining some life. So, yeah.
Yeah, spending that life.
Spending 5, spending 4... It's fine to draw cards.
Get those cards in your hand. So overall, we recommend about 10 to 15 pieces of card draw.
And we like if they are mixes. So don't go like all burst or all active, or activated or all passive. Definitely have a good mix of all of them. The one will say don't skip out on it all. And I think we said this in our episode as well. Don't... please do include some burst card draw. Because sometimes you just have to refill your hand. And
sometimes you have to do it at instant speed in response to something, to find the answer, to dig, to respond to the thing that's happening.
Exactly right.
Yeah, it's important.
Definitely.
All right. Next key category that we need to fill up in our deck, any commander deck, is ramp.
Yeah, totally.
So in an aristocrat strategy, there's actually some really weird synergies with creatures that want to die. That
also ramp us. Yeah. Green is going to be the color that's going to do this the best.
We set that across the board for ramp anyway.
I mean, green just generally ramps better than everybody else.
Gets lands which are tampered with less. Yeah. It's really efficient.
Really efficient. So if you are in a green Aristocrats deck, you can throw cards like Steve, Secura Tribe Elder in there. So you sacrifice him to get a basic onto the battlefield tapped. Diligent Farmhand works very similarly. Krosan Wayfarer is an interesting one.
That's where you sack it and you put a land from your hand onto the battlefield, right?
Yeah.
So feasibly on turn 1, you could put 2 lands onto the battlefield.
You can.
He's just 1 green.
He's a 1 green creature. This one's especially good in a Merrin deck because he's a 1-drop you can reanimate when you have 1 experience counter. So super highly rate that one. In white, you've got a few options that have like ETB specifically. So again, if we're going to be reanimating in any way, these are going to be extra good. So even cards like Core Cartographer, I found a bit of use for.
Yeah.
Scholarship Sponsor. This one I think I played with you the other day. It ramped everyone except you for a bunch. When it enters the battlefield, each player... so weird. You basically... Whoever has the most lands...
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, every other player gets a number of basics until they equal that number of lands. So James had 12 forests in this game.
Yeah, I think I was playing my bear deck,
You were playing the bear deck. And so everyone else had 7 or 8. Yeah. So everyone tutors basics basics and puts them onto the battlefield tapped until they have 12.
Yeah.
James has the most.
This also has a really weird, interesting kind of sub effect that if you're a budget player like Walt and you're not running an excessive amount of typed lands or non-basic lands, some other players might be only running 4 or 5 basic lands in their entire deck.
That's true.
So sometimes you'll have this effect where they go and tutor for a bunch of basics and go, oh, I can only find 3.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but I would not be shocked to see it. Definitely. Yep. That happens. It does happen.
Cool. Well, I mean, there's in black, like, there's a bunch of really cool triggers that when creatures die, you actually ramp yourself.
Oh, they're kind of like make tokens. Yeah.
I have a very horrific memory of Pitiless Plunderer on your battlefield, just creating treasures to create mana to activate and other sacrifice abilities.
Yeah.
Basically, this card says whenever a creature dies, you create a treasure token.
I think it has to be on your battlefield.
Yeah, sorry. A creature you control dies, you create a treasure token.
But it gets out of hand.
Well, it gets out of hand because some of these sacrifice outlets require a mana cost.
Yes.
Right? So you pay the mana, maybe it's 1 black mana to do this, right?
Yeah.
So you pay a black mana to sacrifice a creature, and then Pitiless Plunderer goes, fantastic, a creature on your board died. Here's a treasure.
Yeah.
So now that mana ability sacrifice outlet is now basically for free.
Yeah, it's
It's
crazy.
so good.
This is also another one that does not say non-token creature. So yeah, you can sack your fodder, you can sack your spirits, your zombies, whatever, and those will make treasures. It's crazy.
I think that's what makes it great, because if you pair it with cards that when something dies, you create a body, you get in these like weird loops. They might not be infinite, but they're like an incredible value engine where you can just keep these wheels spinning for ages.
They just keep going in a similar vein, actually, and it would kind of be good on this exact board state we're describing. Pawn of Ulamog.
Oh, that creates the scions or spawn?
I forget which one. It's irrelevant. But whatever it creates, they are little creatures that you can sack to add a colorless mana to your mana pool.
Little Eldrazi things.
Yeah, and this one will also trigger whenever a creature dies. So a non-token creature in this case. Otherwise it would go infinite with itself.
It so would. Yeah, you sack a spawn to generate colorless. It sees the spawn that you just sacrificed, creates a new one.
Yes.
Thank God that doesn't say non-token. It says non-token.
You can reason your way through what the likely text is on a card by whether it goes infinite with itself.
Yeah.
95% of the time, if it will go infinite on its own, it probably isn't what the card says.
I guarantee no one in Wizards let that go through R&D past day one if that was ever read like that.
Would not happen. Otherwise, like if we're sort of in colors that aren't green, and if we're not able to find some of these effects, I think the typical sort of ramp package of mana rocks is going to be fine. Yep. We love our 2 mana rocks, signets, talismans. These are all fantastic.
Yep. But again, we also say that if there is a 3 mana artifact that ramps you, that does something for your deck.
Yeah.
Like actually, maybe there's a sacrifice outlet on it, or it like does something with your command. I don't know, makes it unblockable so you can do something with it. Then yeah, sure, run that as well.
Totally, you can.
But 2 is your sweet spot.
2 is your sweet spot. If for whatever reason you just want to up the creature count, like if it's important that you have a large number of creatures in your deck in general, you can actually play the colorless mana dorks if you're not in green. So you can play Ornithopter of Paradise. You can play, there's a mirror in every color, like Iron Mirror and Leaden Mirror. Like these are all tapped for a single color. But they're colorless creatures, so you can play them in any color deck that you want, assuming that the mana it produces is the color identity of the commander you're playing. So you can't play a blue mana dork in your mono black deck. But anyway, you all know that.
You know how to build a commander deck.
You do.
We advise, in terms of ramp, that again, 10 pieces minimum.
Yes.
If your deck is running some really high-costed, spells, like maybe you're running that huge Command the Dreadhorde effects, or like those big creatures that sacrifice and do loops or whatever, maybe think about running maybe closer to 15.
Yeah.
But we recommend 10 minimum of ramp.
10 minimum is gonna get you a lot of the way along. Next one, very important as well. We love talking about this one. Removal.
Yeah. Every single commander game, you are going to want to get rid of something on someone else's board.
Yes. I think the really cool thing about removal in Aristocrats decks specifically, we actually can benefit from removal, especially removal of creatures, slightly better than most other decks can, because we're typically running Reanimator spells that some of these spells can actually reanimate things from your opponent's graveyard. So sometimes like these spells that deal with your opponent's creatures also provide you fodder that you can then reanimate later. We'll go into that a bit later when we talk about reanimated cards that we recommend. But yeah, I actually think we can go slightly higher on removal than we normally would. I would aim for like the 15 mark on this.
Yeah.
Because we're probably going to have the means to get stuff back.
And also, generally speaking, when we're playing Aristocrats, we're going to be in the color black.
Yes.
And black is very, very good at removing. If we're in a really strong Aristocrats theme, I think we're in white and black.
Yeah.
And I actually said this in the deck building template when we talked about removal. When you combine two colors that are good at a thing, white is really good at removing, black's really good at removing. You combine them, you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, they're greater than the sum of the parts, for sure. It compounds into something even better. One thing we get access to that we're definitely going to recommend for removal is we're probably going to have a bunch of creatures that have enter the battlefield effects. So again, because we're often going to be recurring things from our graveyard, these are going to be better often than the equivalent spell, like the equivalent instant or sorcery that would do the same thing, because we might be able to get it back. So we mentioned Cavalier of Night is a really good one. Ravenous Chupacabra.
Just a cute little dog.
Just a cute little dog that murders. He just kills things.
Yeah, he just comes in and destroys target creature.
Yep.
Boom. That's all it does.
He blows it up. Yes, very, very good. It's 4 mana creature. I think it's like a 2/2 or something. But yeah, the main thing is you're not very often going to be able to get your instants and sorceries back. You're very often going to be able to get your creatures back. So getting Chupacabra back again, it's going to look great.
Yeah, amazing. And like that, obviously we're destroying a lot of creatures here. But Reclamation Sage gets rid of an enchantment or artifact when it enters the battlefield. And again, it's a little bit overcosted for what it does. Like we could run Naturalize or Wilt or another spell that destroys a target enchantment or artifact. But because this is on a stick, on a body, we can use it. We can sacrifice it as fodder later. And maybe if we're running that Reanimator package, bring it back, do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. In a similar vein, this one's another one that would actually fit multiple camps. Overseer of the Damned, I've been really liking lately. This is actually a 7-drop, so this is right at the top of your curve. When it enters the battlefield, you destroy target creature. However, whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you make a 2/2 zombie.
Oh, it's making buddies.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this card.
Making a lot of bodies. If you can, like, again, because we're going to be running a slightly higher than usual removal package.
This card is more valuable to us when we start removing more creatures.
Totally.
Yeah, this is sweet. And again, this is a 7-drop, so maybe up your ramp if you want to be playing cards like this.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Get to this quicker.
Yep, absolutely. The other thing that we're going to be able to do that's going to work in our favor is we're going to be able to synergize with sacrificing stuff. So like
Really good point.
the ability to sacrifice things is going to often trigger the stuff that we want to trigger, and we can turn cards that are normally a disadvantage into kind of a net sort of no disadvantage for us, sometimes even advantage.
Sometimes we get benefit. Like the card that immediately pops to mind for me is Plaguecrafter.
Oh yeah.
It's a card it's a creature, ETBs. Each player, so including you, sacrifices a creature. Plaguecrafter or Planeswalker. And it also reads, if you can't, you discard a card.
Yeah.
So it always gets you some kind of value.
Yeah.
Unless they have no creatures and no hand, which to be fair, they're probably dead anyway. You're always going to get value from this card. But yeah, when it enters the battlefield, you can sacrifice itself, trigger all your Aristocrats effects, drain everyone, or you can sacrifice that creature that maybe you want to put in the bin so you can reanimate to get that ETB again.
Yeah, let's say you want to get your Overseer of the Damned back, like you can sacrifice it, reanimate it,
destroy something else, make another 2/2 body. Ooh, it's good.
Everything keeps turning over. It's looking good. In green, we've got a couple of other sort of similar sort of things to Reclamation Sage. Foundation Breaker is the one that has Evoke, so we can evoke it for 1 in a green. This is again great in a Mirren deck. Haywire Might was printed in Brothers War.
What is this? Is this a new card?
Yeah, this is colorless, but it requires green in the activation cost.
So you can only run it in a green command.
Yeah, exactly right. It's a 1/1 for 1 colorless, 1 generic. You pay a green and sacrifice it to exile target non-creature artifact or enchantment.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, so like it has to be non-creature.
So it's almost is Caustic Caterpillar kind of thing.
It's that was the comparison very early on, and you pay less because Caustic Caterpillar is 1 to cast and 2 to activate.
So it's cheaper.
It's cheaper, and it exiles as well, but it's non-creature. So look, it's great though. If you can play it, if you're in green, I highly recommend it. I've played it. It's been amazing.
Pretty solid. Okay, well look, I'm going to throw in another way to remove some things, because unless you're playing Vidalcanori, which, means you can cast everything at flash speed, which means you can flash these creatures out and you can slam Plaguecrafter on an end step and get all the value.
Oh, imagine.
It's great. If you want to go down that route, maybe one of your enhancers in your deck could be a Vidalcanori, but if you don't want to make that a slot, what I would recommend is running a few redundancy instant speed removal spells.
I think it's good to have some. Otherwise, we're going to sort of feel like we just always tap out on our turn, and then when people go to do things, we just have no ability to respond to them, right?
There's a bunch of these. One of our favorites is a modal dual face card with a land on the back.
Hagra Mauling.
So good.
It's so good.
If you haven't got if you haven't got a space for this, take out a basic land.
Yeah.
It's got a land on the back.
It's a land on the back. It's not going to hurt you. I've been playing Soul Shatter in a similar vein.
That is actually incredibly frustrating because it forces your opponents to sacrifice. It deals with usually the best thing on their board, even if it has hexproof.
It's true. So it's a forced sacrifice effect. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the highest mana value among creatures you control. So the mana value, if it's a 2 black green, then that mana value is total 4. So if that's the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers, that's the one you have to sack. Only your opponents. So this is a 3-for-1 always, basically.
So good.
And look, probably 90% of the time, it deals with the most problematic thing on every board. Because, like we just talked about Overseer of the Damned. That's a 7-drop. That's going to be the highest mana value thing on most boards. Yep. That's the thing they're going to have to sacrifice. I've been playing it recently. I've really liked it.
Yeah, and there is another like sub theme that you could go down where it's like a forced sacrifice theme in your Aristocrats deck. So if you're going down that theme where you've got cards that say whenever an opponent or a player sacrifices a permanent, do this. This is a bomb. This is so good.
Totally. I mean, there's Mayhem Devil would be great.
Card,
would be great in this kind of instance. I think as well, like it's worth mentioning that Blood Artist, like those effects that see every creature die, when you cast your Soul Shatter, that's going to be 3 drained from, in total.
And I think that's why we want to run a little bit more removal in this deck as well.
Yeah, that's another good reason to run more removal. Yeah.
Directly synergizing.
Totally agree.
Okay. They're like our 3 key, very, very important things.
Yes.
But like we've already alluded to, we've mentioned Reanimator quite a bit already. But sometimes you'll want to run a couple of sub-themes or maybe some strategies within your Aristocrats deck that will give you some increased value. Maybe just, it won't be your main game plan, but it will keep you level. It'll give you extra value.
Totally.
So, yeah, should we talk? We've mentioned Reanimator a bunch already.
We have. It's definitely going to be probably the sub-theme that'll be easiest to support. Like, we're already sacrificing things. We're already have a lot of fodder, a lot of dies, triggers. It's just going to naturally fill up our graveyard. We're definitely going to want to include at least some of this because we're doing it already. Like, we're filling the requirements for a Reanimator deck.
And also, our key pieces are creatures that are pretty vulnerable to die.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we can get them back.
Totally.
So, I've already mentioned that most of these creatures are at 3 CMC or less. So, Sun Titan fits in these strategies really well. When he ETBs or attacks, you reanimate a creature with no, a permanent.
A permanent.
So you could get Bastion of Remembrance in this case, isn't it?
I've done this before.
Nice.
It's been very, very good.
Nice.
Highly recommend.
So there you go. Sun Titan, great reanimation.
Yeah, definitely agree. I like Apprentice Necromancer in certain decks. This is a 1 and a black, I believe, for a creature, and then you pay a black, tap it, and sacrifice it. You return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. In the end step, you sacrifice that creature. Again, great in a Mirren deck. It gets you those experience counters, but this also gets you the dies triggers adding up. This on itself is 2 dies triggers at least.
Super cool. One of my favorites that I actually don't run in a deck, but I love it every time it's cast because it's a political tool and I love politics. Incartation Technique.
Yeah.
This card is wildly cool.
It's so cool.
It's got a really weird mechanic on it called Demonstrate.
Yes.
Which basically you can have a target opponent copy this spell and cast it for free.
Yep.
theirs resolves first, but if they do it, you do the card's effect twice.
You get a copy of it as well.
Yeah. So Incarnation technique. Wow, that's a tongue twister. For me, anyway. It reads along the lines of you mill 2 or 3. Is it 3 cards?
Mill 5.
Wow, yeah. I really should run this card.
It's so good.
You mill 5 cards, and then you return a creature card from your graveyard, not from those 5, from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Yep, so this can be anything in your graveyard, and again, like if you give this to one of your opponents, you're doing it twice, you're milling 10, and you will have 2 creatures from among those. Obviously, you can't choose your second creature from the second batch. Like, you can't choose 2 creatures from the second batch because that one won't happen yet. But yeah, milling 10 and having the ability to return 2 creatures back, it's crazy good.
So good. So the politics angle that I'm going down with this is, hey, Walt, I know you've got a creature in your bin that you'd like back. Let's be best buddies. Don't swing at me. Don't do this to me. I'll cast Incarnation. Bloody hell, that is a hard word to say.
Incarnation technique.
Incarnation technique. Yep. Incarnation. Got it. There we go.
Got it. Nice.
If I cast Incarnation technique, you can reanimate your thing. Sound good?
Yep.
Great, we're friends. I'm going to do my thing. But also, if you're clever with this card, if someone's playing Spellslinger, which is another archetype which doesn't run a lot of creatures.
Yeah.
Target them. They're not going to get a value piece.
Well, and they might not even mill anything. They might mill 5 cards and not hit a creature. They might not get anything. And they're not going to feel bad about you targeting them because you gave them the opportunity.
And it was free.
It was free. They didn't pay anything for it. They're going to go, oh, thanks anyway. Sorry I missed. And you're like, oh, how unfortunate.
Anyway, here's an Overseer and a Sun Titan and all these incredible things.
Exactly right. I'm a big fan of the card Victimize for reanimating as well.
Super cool card.
Especially if you're playing a deck where you've got lots of those ETBs triggers.
Yeah.
This one's a 3-mana sorcery. You sacrifice a creature and you return 2 creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped.
This is kind of wild. So you could be sacrificing one of these little 1/1 servos and reanimating, I don't know, say your Gary.
Yeah, your Grey Merchant of Asphodel, for
which
sure.
will enter and drain everyone. Or you could be getting, again, 2 of these key pieces back that are our Aristocrats.
Yeah, and a lot of these are going to have ETBs, so it's going to feel really good to get them back. The other thing we're going to want to include at least some of in this sort of reanimator category is spells that recur multiple things. So Victimize does 2, but we sort of want things that are going to be the big game-winning spell. We've talked about this a few times. We like those spells that just say, you know, in the right circumstance, this just kind of wins me the game on the spot.
Yeah, so some mass recursion in that instance will just win you on the spot.
Yeah, you're going to have the creatures in your bin. It's going to look amazing. Agadeem's Awakening. This is
another modal card.
Modal card. This one's the card, the land you can bolt in on the back. Reanimates a bunch of stuff. Command the Dreadhorde.
Yeah.
Going to reanimate a bunch of stuff from your bin. In the vein of, you know, we talked about how we like our opponents to sacrifice stuff. I love Sepulchral Primordial. This is a 7-mana 5/5 with Intimidate. Might be a 5/4. When it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you return something from a creature card from their graveyard to the battlefield.
Oh, so you get the best thing from everyone's graveyard onto your battlefield.
3 things.
And again, this is another reason why we probably want to run a couple more pieces of removal, right?
Yeah.
We can set this turn up where we go, okay, they've got a Niv Mizzet Perun. That's just drawing them tons of cards. You've got a Merrin, which is going to be great on my battlefield anyway, but I'm in Orzhov, so I can't run it. So I'm going to set this up, remove these key pieces, and then bang, Sepulchral Primordial comes down. I get all of these incredible features. Awesome. This is great.
It's so good. So good. In terms of other themes that will be can be supported, but maybe slightly less so, life gain is definitely something we can do. Your Aristocrats effects, obviously, your Blood Artists, your Zulaport Cutthroats, they are gaining you some life. So you're going to gain incremental amounts. I would say overall, it's a bit less supported than Reanimator unless your commander is gaining you life. Like in an Elasil core deck, 100% life gains are supported strategy. You can play your life gain pieces in there.
Even in Teysa, because Teysa gives a lifelink to creatures.
Lifelink and Vigilance, yeah, totally. That's a good one as well. And yeah, definitely there are versions of the Aristocrats decks that want to sacrifice big things, like Kakusho.
Oh, that card. If you're in a Reanimator sub-theme as well, even just consider running this in your Reanimator sub-theme.
Also nuts specifically in Teysa, because it's a Dies trigger, it'll trigger twice. So this one, I think it deals each opponent loses 5 and you gain life equal to the life lost this way.
Yeah, so deals 5 to each opponent and you gain 15 in the usual situation.
And again, you're going to be looping this. You're going to do it multiple times. In Taser, it's each opponent loses 10, you gain 30.
Wild. It's the biggest tempo swing you'll ever get.
It's crazy.
It's crazy good.
Crazy strong.
Well, one more sub-theme I guess you can go with in Aristocrats is Mill. We've already kind of alluded to it with incarnation technique.
Hey.
Thank you.
You got there.
I'm really proud of that. But obviously, if you're already kind of doing this reanimation thing, or even just utilizing the cards in your graveyard in another way, maybe you've got a creature that cares about how many cards are in your graveyard and you're sacking it for value with greater good, something like that. Milling can be a really strong thing. However, what I would recommend is really consider why you're milling cards. If you can't answer that question with a strong, I'm milling because I've got reanimate and animate dead. If you can't answer strongly, probably don't mill.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of sub-theme that will be more supported if we're closer to the reanimator side of that spectrum we were outlining.
For example, like my Scarab God deck really wants to mill itself down. Because then I get access to my creatures that I can reanimate and cheat out.
Yeah, that one's even an interesting case because you can reanimate, like on your commander, you have the ability to reanimate stuff from your opponent's graveyards. So you also, I know, run a bunch of effects that mill your opponents.
Mesmeric or...
Oh, that one's yucky. I was thinking Court of Cunning, which also works quite well in that deck.
It's also a card draw piece, but Mesmeric Orb. For those that don't know, Mesmeric Orb is a 2-mana colorless artifact. It goes in any mill deck. It is a really weird thing to get your head around is the way it reads, but whenever a permanent becomes untapped, the permanent's controller mills a card. So, when the player goes to their untap phase and untaps all their lands, all their creatures, everything, you mill a card for everything you untap. So this card gets out of hand so quick.
It's absolutely insane. The number of cards it will mill is so much higher than you would expect.
For 2 mana.
Yeah, crazy.
Nuts.
The one thing we also didn't mention sort of around the removal section, I wouldn't mind quickly going into before we leave themes as well. Board wipes. We're gonna need some. We kind of skipped that.
Skipped over board wipes, but and considering we are in a situation where if we are running these reanimator packages, if we are in life gain with that Ellis core dude, where when creatures die we get a bunch of value. Board wipes are super great thing to run.
I think so, because similar to the sort of running of the targeted removal, where you recommend going a bit higher. Mass removal is going to do the same thing, where it's going to put a bunch of stuff in the bin that you can then utilize, whether it's your stuff or your opponents. Yeah, I totally agree with you. What do we think, recommend for board wipes? I'll say right off the bat, in terms of cards that are board wipes that will also just win you the game in the right circumstance, Living Death.
Super cool.
This card is crazy. It reads super weird. The gist of it that you need to take away from it, it reads the way it does, it's just because of the rules and how it has to work. It just swaps your graveyard with your battlefield. And for everybody.
So if you're running this card, then you can probably look at mill strategies as a little bit better.
They become much stronger.
If you're self-milling, you're going to get a bunch more value from sacrificing a bunch of 1/1s and then reanimating your Sepulchral Primordial and your big value creatures.
Yeah, totally agree. That card have won many games within my memory deck for sure.
If you're in a life gain sub-theme, you could run things like Fumigate as well.
Yeah, definitely if you're leaning into the life gain, Fumigate's great. That's 3 white. Destroy all creatures, you gain 1 life for each creature destroyed.
But I think
good.
Yeah, there's also another version of that living end card. It's Dread Return.
This is the one where you sacrifice 3 creatures to return something.
Oh no, that's just your sacrificing. I thought each player sacrificed. But there you go. There's another good reanimation.
Oh, that's a great reanimation spell. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of board wipes, actually, and reanimation specifically, Necromantic Selection.
Oh, now this one's a bit cheeky.
This one is cheeky.
Because it does something that is so hard to do in Commander.
Yeah, so it's 4 black. So it's quite X-y, mana value wise. Not in cost, in dollars. No. It's very cheap in dollars. It destroys all creatures. Then you choose a creature that was destroyed this way and return it to the battlefield under your control. Exile Necromantic Selection. Do you want to outline what makes it so cheeky?
It's such a weird reason why, but because the spell resolves all at once.
Yes.
The effect of the spell taking one of the creatures that has been destroyed and putting it onto your battlefield happens before the state-based action of someone deciding whether or not their commander goes to the command zone or the graveyard.
So this is one of the very, very few instances where you can destroy someone's commander and get it, and they have no opportunity to put it in the command zone. It's very cheeky. It's a bit salty, I'll say. Be careful about who you're doing this with, but it's very strong.
You take someone's Niv Mizzet, they're going to cry. I'm going to guarantee it.
They're not going to be happy. But look, you can also just get a really good creature that dies as well. That's also going to be great.
I think another really great one in an Aristocrats theme is Ingaruk's Wake. Another really super X-y mana value to cast. I think it's 7 black.
9 altogether.
9 altogether. It's a big cost, but it destroys all your opponent's creatures and planeswalkers.
Yeah.
Kind of wild. So if you've got a Blood Artist down, you get all the benefit from their creatures dying.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And you keep all of your things to hold up instant speed sacks and responses. It's just, it's good.
For sure. There's not that many, I would say, beyond what we've just outlined, there's not that many board wipes that synergize with specifically Aristocrats. So if you're looking for your board wipes and you're trying to pick which ones, I would say probably just refer back to our deck building template. Watch, I think it was episode 2 where we went into removal a lot. We just outlined a bunch of board wipes that we really like. Mostly just pick the board wipes that are good, and a few of them will be extra good.
And if you've got a sub-theme, a few of them are going to be extra good, like the Reanimator, Life Gain, Mill sub-themes that we just went through.
Yeah, totally. Well, look, that's most of what we want to do. So, I hope you've realized that when we play Aristocrats decks, we sort of transform the typical play patterns of combat and casting spells, and we flip them on their head. We do it completely differently. The game becomes this careful, methodical constriction of your opponents. And there's plenty of room for these interesting instant speed responses with sack outlets and sneaky sequences of plays and splashy reanimators like that, like that in Garrick's Wake. That's going to feel really cool to do. And we hope that the episode has given you the tools to build a deck of your own. And most importantly, we hope the Space Commanders will let us out of the bedroom.
Whoa, look. That green glow, it's fading. It's going away.
It's gone.
Space Commanders.
Command received.
Well, you didn't do the salute.
Well, I was scared of the light.
But it's gone now. We're free.
But where's it gone?
Hang on. Does the door opens? We're good.
The door. Okay. All right. Everything's fine. Everything's great.
Oh my lord. Okay, well, look, to the listeners, do you feel commanded? What do you think of Aristocrats as a strategy in deck building? If you own one, are you going to be swapping around some cards based on the cards that we just mentioned? If you don't own one, are you going to now give it a crack? It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
White, black, like Orzhov is your colors for it, but I even managed to do a bit of a sub-theme with
Rakdos.
I got Gruul in my, because I got Goblin Bombardment.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Which,
the 5 left deck is similar.
Yeah, it doesn't say it's an Aristocrat, but Goblin Bombardment is a 1 and a red that says sacrifice a creature, it deals 1 damage to any target, so kind of a Blood Artist in red.
No, totally it is. Yeah. And definitely let us know what commander you're going to pick as well. I'm interested to hear what commander color identity you go for, because it really changes. Like, I think the black-white Aristocrats decks are super life-gainy, but we sort of talked about how the black-green decks are more about reanimating. And if you play Abzan, black-green-white,
you get the best of everything.
You get the best of both worlds.
Carador
does everything. Yeah,
there you go.
Super cool.
All right.
Well, as is tradition at this point in the podcast, we need to planeswalk out.
Now that we have the ability to leave.
That's true.
Yeah.
We had our sparks deactivated before, but we can planeswalk now.
The Space Commanders have the Immortal Sun. That's terrifying. Alright, it's my turn to planeswalk.
It's your turn to planeswalk. Good.
Let's get out of here. I'm going to planeswalk into the realm of dermatology.
Oh, I haven't visited dermatology in a while. How's that going?
Yeah, it's wild. They run these really weird basic lands called Dandruff. It's wild.
I hate those basics.
Just get all over your playmat. I'm sorry, this is a bit of a gross one, but look, I wanted to do a bit of bragging in this Planeswalk because for those that don't know me or have never seen me in person, I actually have a skin condition. I have atopic eczema, dermatitis.
Yep.
It's been a detriment to my life since I was a baby. It causes red rashes and some scabbing and basically just the most furious itch across my body, around my eyes, like in my groin, around my feet. It's pretty horrible to deal with.
Yeah, even when you're asleep, I know that like sleeping is quite difficult at times as well.
Yeah, I've my partner has said like, oh, last night was a bad night for you. Was it, your skin bad because you were scratching in your sleep? So it's been a big problem in my life for a long time. However, I've just started working with a new dermatologist. Screw it, I'm gonna shout him out. Dr. Alvin Chong. Incredible human. Very lovely, very nice, very patient and considerate and affectionate in a medical setting, which is always lovely.
That's rare too, yeah.
Yeah, he has put me on to this incredible injection, actually.
Right.
Not a cream, which, usually you treat dermatitis with a cream.
Yeah, it's pretty normal for a rash or something.
Yeah, I'm self-injecting, I just get basically a bit of blubber from my stomach or my thigh, and I inject this like little vial of liquid into myself every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And oh my God, this stuff is a miracle solution. I have no idea what's in it, but like I just showed Walt my arms, and you've known me for a long time.
Yeah, this is your skin is definitely healthier than it's been the whole time that I've known you. It's actually remarkable. Yeah, like for most of the time I've known James, there's been like itchy parts of your arms and around your neck
scratches
and scratches and stuff, and like you're basically mark free. It's remarkable.
It's
really
wild. However, now that my skin has calmed down, I'm not sure if you can see it. It's like there's scarring from like how bad my skin has been in the past.
Gosh.
So it's like it's kind of a wonderful thing for me to see though, because I never noticed it was scars, but now that's like scars are an example of what happened in the past. So this is kind of a nice thing for me to see. It's
this is like the pain is maybe over now.
I know, and it's honestly, I know it's a bit of a weird Planeswalk, but I'm so happy about this.
Yeah.
I actually ended up, there's a wonderful, there's a set of parents in our community, and they have a little girl who is also affected by pretty horrific atopic eczema.
Yep, I've met her before, yeah.
Yeah, and I've talked to the parents quite consistently about treatments and all this kind of stuff, and in the same vein that I'm getting better, she's now getting a little bit better as well. I've put them onto the dermatologist and, generated a little bit of community awareness around it. And eczema sucks. It really is horrible. And especially living in Australia where it's really hot.
Yeah, and dry too.
Yeah, it's really hard to live with eczema. So I'm just really happy to report that I'm getting to a point where I can live my life normally.
That's great.
It's really lovely.
No, it's fantastic. I think as a very non-magic related aside, take a moment when you can to be thankful for whatever wonderful health you have. If you in whichever way it is. Where most of us are so fortunate to have really, really wonderful health. Yeah,
I think I'm a very mentally stable person. I thank myself every day that that I've got that. Yeah, it just take a second. If you've got very smooth and luscious skin, appreciate that for me. Yeah, just go ahead and appreciate
for
that.
James. Yeah, do it. Well, that's about it from us. Please do join our Discord. Shoot us some questions. Let us know what you thought. But that's about it. Thanks so much for sticking with us, and we'll be back for more hijinks.
Do you want me to get your decks out the car now?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, the kettle.
Oh, wow. Okay, all right. Bye, Commander players.
Bye.